התחילו.
Good
Hello,
evening.
good evening.
Uh,
Perhaps Omri, you begin with some
yes,
technical explanations, and then I continue.
yes. Hello everyone. I'm talking in English, but I'll switch for a second. מי שצריך תרגום בעברית או בערבית, יש למטה את האפשרות, interpretation, זה נראה כמו גלובוס, לבחור תרגום סימולטני לעברית או לערבית. אנחנו נמשיך לדבר באנגלית, אז מי שצריך תרגום, שוב למטה, interpretation כמו גלובוס כזה, ותבחרו Hebrew או Arabic. So that's a technical explanation. We're also being, so some of the participants are here in the webinar, others are, we're being live streamed on YouTube. So if you, for some reason, are unable to connect again, just follow the link that was also in the email to those who registered. You can also view the live stream on YouTube. This is a webinar of the Peace Partnership Coalition of the Jewish and Arabic organizations inside Israel that fight against the genocide in Gaza, against the occupation, for just peace for both people. We're very honored to host today Francesca Albanese and Ofer Cassif. Let Ofer introduce you properly after I'm done. I'll just say that after the conversation between Ofer and Francesca, we'll open it to questions from the participants, the attendees. So if you have a question for Francesca or for Ofer, please write me a message in the chat, and I'll present the questions in the second half of the webinar. I would also like to thank Mothers Against Violence for building the platform that we're using and helping us organize all of this. In addition, again, you could watch later the recording on YouTube, as well as the previous webinars that we've held with various Jewish and Arab peace organizations over the last month and a half. And I think with that, I'll again thank you all the participants. Thank you to Ofer and Francesca. And Ofer, I'm going to bring it to you.
Thank you very much, Omri. Good evening, and thank you everyone for joining us. It is a profound pleasure and an honor to host my friend Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories. Francesca is responsible for a series of seminal and meticulously documented reports detailing the crimes of apartheid, torture, and genocide in the context of Israel's unlawful occupation of the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza, known since 1967 as the occupied Palestinian territories. For her unwavering integrity and commitment to justice in Israel-Palestine, she has been relentlessly targeted by powerful actors, including the President of the United States and the French Foreign Minister, just to mention a few, and has paid a heavy personal price. It is imperative to emphasize that, contrary to malicious smears, Francesca has consistently condemned all forms of racism, discrimination, and xenophobia, including anti-Semitism, and has equally unequivocally condemned the killing and targeting of civilians, including Israeli civilians, and has issued clear and unequivocal condemnations of the October 7 massacre. Among her landmark reports, the most famous are Deprivation of Liberty from July 23, Anatomy of a Genocide, March 24, Genocide as Colonial Erasure, October 24, From Economy to Occupation, of Occupation to Economy of Genocide from July 25, and Torture and Genocide that was just published recently this month in April 26. And these reports, alongside a broader body of work, present a coherent thesis that Israeli policy has evolved from a long-standing status quo of domination and apartheid, often referred to in colonial parlance as conflict management, quote unquote, to a policy of elimination. And I'd like to begin by asking Francesca, in what sense can we indeed observe a logical progression from subjugation to elimination? And in what manner does this reflect a transition from profit through land looting and cheap labor of Palestinians to profit through destruction and erasure? Thank you.
Okay, so let me start. Sorry, just a second, because I hear it, Nico, which was not there before, badly. Omri, can you do it?
Is it okay?
Mm-mm.
You can
Otherwise,
hear yourself in me? There's an echo?
It's horrible. I hear myself.
We hear you. I hear you just fine.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. All right. I will speak, and then I just muted myself. So if you want to interrupt me at any point, please wave, otherwise I will not hear you. So first of all, toda rabah for having me, and shalom, everyone. I mean, as I was commenting, before, it has been quite a while that I've not had the occasion, the opportunity to interact with an Israeli public. And I hope that there are people who don't know me. There are people who really think that I am the bad person, who the Israeli government and many pro-apartheid allies of Israel continue to project. So you can hear from my very voice, and you will realize that most of the things that I'm accused of are things that don't belong to me. I mean, I was listening to Ofer introducing me as someone who's against racism. Of course, I'm a human rights lawyer. Of course, I stand against racism. Of course, I stand against anti-Semitism. My quintessential being a lawyer, a human rights lawyer, and being so passionate about what I do is because I grew up in a country, and thank God, in a family who educated me about the crimes of Nazi fascism. And again, it's been really painful for me to sit in this position and be accused of anti-Semitism, because what I do has nothing to do with the religion that Israel professes. Absolutely. I mean, Israel could be Christian, secular, as it was in the beginning, or Buddhist. It wouldn't change anything. I mean, I don't contest Israel existence as a state. No, I just said that Israel behaves in line with international law. And trust me, my friend, it doesn't. As long as I can testify as an observer since May 2020, since the 1st of May 2022, when I've been appointed special rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territory, namely Gaza, the West Bank, and Jerusalem, and mandated to document and report on the violations that Israel commits as an occupying power. Because although many people in Israel seem oblivious to that, from an international law point of view, Israel illegally occupies the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem, even before 2023. And this has been, again, even the International Court of Justice has declared various times in 2024 that Israel was violating the right of self-determination of the Palestinian in what remains of historical Palestine. And even in 2024 has ordered Israel to withdraw its occupation. And then we will elaborate on that. But this is what I've always advocated for the protection of both Palestinians and Israelis. And this is why I was happy to be invited to speak to you. And of course, I've condemned the violence against Israelis on October 7th. Of course, what I've contested, and this is what has put me in the crosshairs of the French President Emmanuel Macron, is the fact that, they continue to say that the leitmotif, that the root cause of the violence that was used against Israeli civilians was anti-Semitism. Excuse me, No, I don't think it make a difference. I'm not saying that there was not anti-Semitism feeling at a certain point or for some individuals, but the main cause of violence is the rage that might be actually that is created by oppression, humiliation, indignities. And I would like to challenge everyone, every decent human being, let alone Israelis, to go to be in the life of the Palestinians as a Palestinians for one day and keeping to love the Israelis, let alone what has happened to their historical homeland, because you might dispute this, but again, there is such a baggage. But let's start shwa, little by little. So, answering the question. And documenting, I was not an expert on the human rights situation in the occupied Palestinian territory when I was appointed. Now I am. I was a scholar and an expert, a legal expert on the question of Palestine. This is what I was teaching. This was what I was writing about when I was appointed by the Human Rights Council. I had no idea of what I would write about and what I would discover as I started. And particularly, it was very painful for me as a European to write a report, Anatomy of a Genocide. It was less painful. I was already more motivated when I explained. So I analyzed the first 5 months of Israel's attack in Gaza, which Israel has the right to protect itself. Of course, it doesn't have the right to wage a war against the population it occupies. It doesn't. It has law and order powers. Yes, it does, even if it's an illegal occupying power. But it didn't have the right to bombard from north to south, east to west, and vice versa, the Gaza Strip, destroying it. Have you seen a picture of Gaza, my friends? Really, it's phenomenal, the brutality that has been unleashed against these people. It's an apocalypse, what has been done to Gaza. And this is going to seed violence for the generations to come if it's not stopped now. Not only, again, I think that the Palestinians have developed such an enduring sumud, as they call it, a capacity to go with the violence. Other peoples in the region, no. And today, with all what's happening. But however, going back to my work, so I analyzed the genocide. I analyzed why this genocide is happening. Because Israeli ministers are saying that bluntly. They want the land from the river to the sea, and there shouldn't be Palestinians. They should migrate. They should go wherever they can. This is unlawful. This is ethnic cleansing, and it might entail the crime of forced displacement, other crimes that have already been committed. But what I've documented was that genocide was part of a colonial erasure, erasing the Palestinians from that land. But the question is, how is it possible that no one has stopped Israel? And this is where I've concentrated my work, my investigation for the past year and a half. And I've uncovered the network. There was one question that I couldn't make sense of. I have Israeli friends who were commenting on how the economy in Israel was collapsing in 2024. Businesses, startups that were closing, and many people who had lost their income and were on social security. It didn't make sense to me because the Israeli stock exchange kept on rising. The Israeli ministry, while there was a deficit in the Israeli national budget, Israel kept on fighting pretty harshly. Why? Because it was armed by others. And because there were many others who were profiting from the war, from the loss of life, and I'm saying from the pain of both the Palestinians and the Israelis. And this is how I documented what I called the economy of the occupation, which transforms into an economy of genocide. There are companies like arms manufacturers, civilian businesses, producers, Hyundai, Volvo, producers of machinery that was once used in the West Bank to demolish what remained of Palestinian homes, to level the ground, and then they've been moved to the Gaza Strip to pulverize what remains of Palestinian homes. Airbnb, Booking.com, advertising the property of that settlers inhabit in the West Bank, or even real estate agents advertising properties of the Palestinians who has not been taken yet, advertising lots and homes that would be taken one day. So you see the rapaciousness of this enterprise. And so I've not gone after Israelis. I've gone against, rather, after companies who profit from the misery of Palestinians, the indoctrination of the Israeli settlers. Because these kids in settlements, I mean, it's not their fault where they grow up. It's the fault of the state, which used them as pawns of a colonization process. So, and when I also point to tech that has been part of it. I was accused of being a threat to the global economy, and I was sanctioned. I was put on the sanction list by the US, despite the privileges and immunities that I benefit from as a UN person. And I'm treated as a terrorist, as a drug dealer, just for, and then I documented also the complicity of states. So member states criticize Israel, continue to trade, continue to arm Israel, and to shelter Israel from accountability in practice. By helping this government and whomever supports it, I don't think that any country is doing the interest of the Israelis. Is the end of international law? No, I don't think so. But we need to make it fitting to our life. And in order to make it fitting to our life, we need to understand what's the purpose here. I think that there is one way forward, and it's going to be super painful for everyone because it means swallowing a lot of bad feelings. But it's necessary to recognize, as my friend Omar Amos Goldberg and Bashir say, it's about recognizing the pain of the other, the trauma of the other, and draw a line. Because if we do not stop at this, really, at the last inch of humanity that remains to us, the current violence will not just be the present, we will be the future for generations to come. And so far, my predictions have proven right.
Thank you. I would like to refer to 3 points that you mentioned, and I'll try to be coherent in raising them. First of all, regarding what you just said regarding recognizing the pain of each other, which I totally embrace, of course, I must share with you all, and especially with you, Francesca, although I know you are aware of it, that most of the times that my comrades and myself, I'm talking now specifically within the Knesset, in the plenum, most of the times that we are silenced, even kicked out of the plenum, is because we express our pain for everybody. It's not because we support Hamas, because we don't. Exactly the opposite. It's not because we perish the thought support violence. We are against it. It's because we dare, as it were, to raise our voice and to express emotionally and rationally our pain and disdain at any kind of violence and bloodshed, whether it's in the Israeli side, on the Israeli side, or the Palestinian side. And further, Lebanon, Iran, unfortunately, everybody is involved now. So it's very important what you said, and I wonder what you think about the instruments, the tools that the international community has in order to allow, first and foremost, the very expression of such a pain. And on top of that, even more importantly, to make the people recognize the pain. And another 2 points, which I'll be very brief in presenting them, but all of them are connected. Do you think that the international law is still functions as a universal standard, or it has devolved into a rhetorical tool, manipulated and used by the politically powerful against the weak? because I think what has been going, especially in Gaza in the last 3 years, and in the West, and the ethnic cleansing that goes on in the West Bank, including the terrorism inflicted on the Palestinians, especially by the settlers under the auspices of the occupation forces, we see that the international community, generally speaking, doesn't really refer to it or do anything about it. And the last thing, following what you said about the economy and the firms and companies, where does the legal chain of complicity end? Is it possible to isolate genocidal economy without inciting, the entire global financial system that facilitates it?
Oh, how many hours?
That's what I wanted to ask about the questions themselves.
It's not new. It's not new what's happening right now. It's not new in the sense, look, apart from one crime that we found that Israel has committed in the past 3 years, that it hadn't committed, surely not with this intensity against the Palestinians. It's enforced disappearances. There are 4,000 Palestinians from Gaza who have been apprehended, who have been captured, who have been, most of the cases I've investigated are civilians. Most of the killings that the Israeli army admits to be responsible for are civilians by its own admission. So we are not talking even of combatants, but again, the thing is that nothing of this is new because there has been a dehumanization of the Palestinians. I remember, I mean, I've lived in Jerusalem, and I always found, for me, it was such an experience to be an Italian meeting Israelis because they love Italy. So I would at the doctors or in a mall or during a trip, I would meet people who were curious about why I was there. They were so gentle and open. The moment I mentioned the fact that I was working for the UN and with Palestinians, and things would change. There is a really deep-seated, deep-rooted fear in dehumanization of the Palestinians. So there is this perception that the Palestinians are a danger. All of them. And this dehumanization is typical of what juridically can express itself as an apartheid regime. Because an apartheid regime is a regime that differentiates and institutionally differentiates on the ground of race. Of course, this regime entails pain, and it's painful both, of course, clearly, for those who are exposed to this, for those who are the victims of this, for those who are the subjects. But I don't believe for a minute that the Israelis themselves are immune from this pain. And the level of suicides that have been committed by young Israelis in the past 3 years and even before speak to this. These young people who have participated into the slaughter of civilians and children cannot survive with the haunting of what they've done. So they need healing. And again, this is a moment I'm encouraging everyone to Frantz Fanon and what he has left in terms of understanding the mentality of everyone. And in everyone, there is a level of unhealed trauma and unhealed victimhood. But the fact that you are kicked out of the parliament because of empathizing with the other is already sign of moral decay. But even the fact, you have reintroduced the death penalty. This is the only country where the death penalty has been celebrated with champagne looking like, with a fizzy.
Candies, yeah.
Guys, come on. There are 20,000 kids who have been killed. Can we agree that all children are equal? Because if Palestinian children are not deserving of your empathy, why would your children deserve other people's empathy? I'm just asking. No, because again, I really challenge the idea that we cannot empathize with the others. We must. And in fact, when people ask me why I am so passionate in this, it's because I belong to this organization called Mothers Against Violence. Before being a lawyer and before being a special rapporteur, I'm a mother. I'm a mother who's tremendously traumatized by what I have seen. It's not my life. And still, I'm not Israeli, I'm not Palestinian. And still, you don't need to be Israeli or Palestinian to suffer hell for what is happening to both people. And it is to stop. So regarding international law, no, I don't think that in the international law is rhetorical at all. But also, let me tell you, I mean, there are various branches of international law. There is finance law, banking law. No, I talk about human rights. That body of law that has developed particularly after the Second World War. And it's the genocide of the Jewish people which has been the prompter of that development. I mean, the Genocide Convention was passed because of how it was not immediately endorsed by states. There was the campaigning of human beings like you and I behind it. Raphael Lemkin, the man who coined, the Jewish scholar, the Jewish lawyer who coined the term genocide, had a clear image of what genocide constituted, a process, something that starts with dehumanization, something that has preliminary stages, as other Israeli and Holocaust historians.
As an Italian, you know, Primo Levi wrote about it, exactly about that.
Who?
Primo Levi.
Absolutely. Sorry, I need to mute myself, otherwise I hear the echo. Primo Levi.
Maybe you can use a headset, Francesca?
I've been raised by a family who, now I say forced, thankfully, they forced me to read, but also in school, we study Primo Levi when we are in secondary school, between age 11 and 13. So, you know, I'm asking my daughter to read from graphic novels to books what has happened in Europe, because again, this was and Raphael Lemkin and other scholars knew that what the Jews had been subjected to in Europe was the transfer of colonial practices inside Europe. Because Germany, I've almost been arrested in Germany for saying that Germany has committed 2 genocides in the span of 30 years. It has genocided the Nama and the Herero people. And there is an Israeli scholar, Eyal Weizman, who has worked also on the reconstruction of that genocide. And then they've experimented the same practices of creating ghettos, of forcing famine. I mean, in Europe, I blame Europeans because we have reduced the Holocaust to the experience of the concentration camps. But no, the Holocaust started with the ghettos, with the racial laws that had been passed, which had created. So a genocide is a process. It's the intentional destruction of a group as such. And you read the intent by how the group is targeted. And no, international law is not dead. If today millions of people know what the Genocide Convention is, because for the young people right now, what's happening is not like for me, I learned genocide through Primo Levi. They're learning genocide through what they see on their phones that it's happening to Gaza. This is why or the West Bank. This is why I'm telling Israelis, please go to the West Bank. Go to the West Bank and stop the terror there. It's unbelievable what is being done to Palestinian families. It's unbelievable what is being done in your name. Please, don't be oblivious to this. Don't be like Europeans 1 century ago. Because the reason why I am like that is because I want to be different from my grandfathers and European ancestors. Let's put it this way. No, but of course, member states, those who are in power, use international law as if it was a rhetorical, cosmetic tool. No, people are mobilizing because today is the time to prove that human rights is really universal. Of what is true for the Israelis is true for the Palestinians. That no one can be abused. I mean, is it normal? I've just sorry, you need to let me say that. I just wrote a report on torture. I've collected 300 testimonies of people who have been tortured in the most brutal way. They've been raped by dogs trained to rape. Do you know this or not? Israelis. Of course, people are upset with many in your country, because if it's a democracy, why don't you act to make sure that those responsible are brought to before a judge? You know, it's not possible. The only person who has denounced it out in the establishment is now arrested. Ifat, I think is her name, Yerushalayim, and those who have been accused of rape, the charges against them have been dropped. You know, this is not normal. And I say that what society is happening in constitutional democracies like mine in Italy is that we are going through an Israelization of our democracies, where Israel has become a model, where some can vote, others do not vote. They are considered as an encumbrance, refugees and migrants first in line. And then, you know, you can apply the law to some and brutality to others, and it's totally fine. And meanwhile, you can use these people as a laboratory. Like Israel, for decades, I used the Palestinians as a laboratory for weaponry and the security systems, then they would be sold abroad, Pegasus or anything that Israel is doing with Palantir. The last question you asked me was, sorry, if it's sorry,
complicity of the firms, the legal chain of complicity.
Yes.
Francesca, maybe you can put on a headset.
This is very important, because I would like you to understand what has happened. I realized, seriously, I mean, I married an economist, and he looked at me and said, really, it took you like 48 years to understand this basic concept that I'm sharing with you. And yes, I realized that the genocide has not been stopped. Not because people don't care, but because the decision making is not in the hands of the people. It's in the hands of predatory elites who control the economic power, finance. This is not an anti-Semitic trope. I'm not talking of any religion. I mean, I'm talking of companies, of corporations.
It's a class issue, you may call it like that.
Control over financial powers, extractivism, for example, or control the big tech, the algorithms, mostly American companies that I mentioned in my report, Microsoft, Google, but also systems like Palantir. Palantir is brutal. It's a brutal company. And it's going to harm all of us if we don't stop it, because it's going to transform us into an Orwellian society where everything and everyone can be surveyed and spied. And so there is the financial system that necessitates of the military system, the security system, because in order to protect yourself, in order to protect this increasing wealth, the predatory elites that are surely in the US, like in Europe, in the Arab region, I mean, it's not a concentration of in one country or one group. It's a system. It's turbo capitalism, anarcho-capitalism. This is above the law. Yanis Varoufakis calls it techno-feudalism. It bypasses the market, but they control the natural resources, they control the finances, they control the way we get information. And Anna used to say that we need to be careful of when the narrative is so manipulated that doesn't allow us to differentiate between what is true and what is false, because it creates such a cognitive fatigue and detachment that then doesn't allow us to defend ourselves from oppression. And so yes, there is a global complicity which is made of finance, military security system, defense industry, and spying systems, and controls of the algorithm, control of the media. And this is how an elite, which look, it's the 1% of the world, 60, I think it's no, I don't want to use numbers because sometimes the 1% of the world controls 3 times what it's controlled by the poorest 40% of the world. The 40% poorest of the world. I mean, do we understand that unless someone among us, you can think whatever you want, you can vote right, you can vote left, but trust me, and this is one of my predictions, if you are someone who doesn't control huge capitals, military systems, and algorithms, chances are that you are as weak as me, or as weak as the Palestinians, or the Lebanese today, or the Sudanese, or the Congolese. Those whose rights are crushed and they have no means to defend themselves. This is why I say this is a moment for humanity to stick together, for human beings to go beyond identity politics and understand that we do have a common enemy. And we need to make sure that the decision-making power stays in the hands of the people and not financial capitals.
I would like to follow what you said. In other words, you actually referred to the power structure, which is not solely, let's call it a clear or in a narrow sense a political structure, although it's also a class structure. The basis of the political power is economic power. So it is basically class issue. But if I go back to both class and politics, so the question is, and I agree with you, of course, I think that you mentioned something very, very important. Throughout history, especially modern history, everywhere, the beginning of a genocide was also dehumanization and demonization of the victims. Because in order to allow, I mean, perhaps I'm too optimistic, I don't know, or naive, but basically people, I totally endorse what Nelson Mandela said in his autobiography, that people are not born to hate, they are taught to hate. And equally, they can be educated to love. And he adds, by the way, that it is even more natural, it comes more naturally to people to love rather than to hate. Now, I mention it because the dehumanization and demonization of any particular group, it may be the Palestinians or Jews or black people here or there, etc., or even other communities. It may be gender-based, not only ethnically based. So the question is that if this demonization is carried out by the powerful, so calling everybody to be more humane is not it's not a political project. I mean, in order to materialize it, we have to think how to politicize the humanitarian way of thinking and behaving. And the big question is, of course, and if you said before how many hours we have, now I suspect you're going to ask how many weeks we have, but still I'll ask the question, what do you think can be done given the power structure and the power differences based on class, on gender, on ethnicity, and mainly on the global economy? How can we and what can we do in order to materialize a humanitarian global struggle against all those atrocities that, like in the occupied Palestinian territories and otherwise? What can we do? Does the international law suffice? I think it's not. It doesn't.
Can you hear me better now?
I could hear you okay all throughout our discussion. I don't know about
No,
that.
because there are people who cannot hear me, and I just I've done. I really feel bad.
I think it's okay. At least I can hear you very well.
Just
Yeah,
let me
in the
check.
chat they're
Those
saying
can
they can hear you better.
Do you hear me better?
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So here's what I think. Let's talk about Italy for a minute, and not about Israel. All right. But again, I'd really like people to think in transferable terms, because yes, I do agree with you and Nelson Mandela. It's not what I am born. It's what I'm raised with, values and principles. And I think there is something incredibly revealing. For me, Palestine has become a painful lens through which I look at the world, and now I see. And the thing is that the moment you see it, you cannot unsee it anymore. You see the white hair I have. I had no white hair until 3 years ago, and all of a sudden, in 6 months of genocide, poof, it exploded, because it's been really painful for me as a mother to see. I remember October 7, and every day after October 7, actually on October 7, I said, Jesus Christ, I have so metabolized the view of Palestinian bodies killed that I'm humanizing them. Because when I saw what had happened to Israelis on October 7, people killed in the street, at the festival, in the cars, I was suffocating really for hours. I didn't know. I mean, I was receiving phone calls for interviews, and I didn't know what to say. I just wanted to hide, in a hole and not to get out until this was passed. But then the thing is that we need to think of ourselves as humans in this. So let's go back to Italy. Italians right now are so infuriated, and they hate migrants and refugees. Many, not all of us. They hate migrants and refugees so much that they have voted for a government whose predicament is to fight against the migration crisis. Migration crisis? Seriously, there is a crisis that is related to migration, a migration emergency. Everything migrates in life. This is nature. Birds migrate, and pollen migrates, and everything migrates. And I mean, the first thing that we should be able to see is how boundaries serve certain interests and not others, and serve also often go with racism and discrimination. Because, for example, we have been so welcoming, we Europeans, when there has been the Ukrainian refugee crisis. We have been phenomenal. ABC of how you deal with protection. We have been welcoming Ukraine with stuffed animals and hot chocolate for kids, giving homes, welcoming Ukrainians in our homes. Fantastic. This is what my own family did during the Albanian crisis in the 90s. You open your home, no matter how small it is, and you welcome people. Dude, but at the same time, people of a different color and of a different religion were left dying in the Mediterranean in the thousands. It's been incredible, the cemetery that the Mediterranean Sea has become. So what is the difference? Nothing other than race and skin color. You understand what I'm doing? And there have been saying that well, these are like, what does it mean like that? And you know that the German chancellor in 2025 said about Israel's attack on Iran, against Iran, said Israel is doing the dirty job of all of us. Who's us? Who's us? We white supremacists. This is the thing. And the white supremacists have been able to convince white people themselves in Europe that the emergency is the other, is the refugee, is the migrant. And so you, instead of looking at who's stealing money from people's everyday work, from workers, from academia, from basic services, while the system gets increasingly privatized, it's corporations. This is why, I mean, those I call the predatory elites are very interested in seeing us fighting among each other. Because while we entertain ourselves and do not tackle the bigger issue, that we have fundamental rights. And if those rights are true, we need to have income redistribution. And no, I'm really, I don't want everyone to be depredated, starting with the former colonial people, starting with Congo and Sudan. And again, this logic must apply also to Israel-Palestine. We need to admit, I need to recognize that at least as of 1967, without even thinking what has happened to historical Palestine, which, by the way, my friends, sooner or later will have to be dealt with, because it's not, I mean, it's not. There was a Jewish question, which was a European problem, and it was resolved by putting by putting the burden on the Jewish people themselves, who had no other alternative, no other place where to go than Palestine. But still, this movement was part of a project of dispossession. Those who arrived in Palestine in the 30s and in the 40s didn't arrive just as refugees. Many of them took part in the dispossession of Palestine. This is a fact. You can challenge it, but these are the sources. There was also a fantastic article by Adam Ras on Haaretz recently. Yeah. I mean, your archives are still sealed, but they should be open. And this is the thing. But at least in 1967, the Gaza Strip, West Bank and East Jerusalem was military occupied. This must end. There is no right for people from Brooklyn or from Paris or from Berlin to move into the West Bank. There is no right for real estate agents to sell Palestinian property in Montreal. So this is why I'm glad to have written reports that probably challenge the borders of my mandate, because of course member states are fine until I'm there picking on Israel and the violation that Israel commits. Yeah. But the moment I looked at who supports Israel and who's profiting from the misery of millions, millions between the river and the sea, then this is when I was put on the sanction list of the US. So you understand, I touched the nerve. I poked the bear, not in one eye, but in both eyes. I do not regret it.
There are sound issues again.
So wait a second. Disable the noise cancellation. So if I do in audio,
I do not hear any noises.
Is it better now?
Ofer, you and I, we're in the same stream, so we hear okay. It's the other people that
right, I see. Okay.
Okay, is it better now?
Could you speak some more?
Okay, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Can you hear
Chat,
me?
let us know.
Let's try to have some questions from the floor. I understand that some participants would like to raise some questions. So
yes, there are questions in the chat.
That's the time to do so, because we have at our disposal, I guess, about 15-20 minutes. Is it right, Omri?
We can go past 9. It's okay.
Okay, so you just
read the again,
questions
anyone who wants to ask questions, please write them in chat. You can write to me, or you can write in the general chat, and we'll present the questions to Francesca and to Ofer. So starting in order. First of all, I said a member of Knesset, Aida Tuma-Suleiman, who's also with us, just wanted to send her greetings and said what an honor it is to have you here. So I'll throw a couple of questions at you, and you'll decide how to answer. So could you elaborate on your predictions that were proven right?
Yes, but can I say something? Sorry, I mute myself. Can I say something really knowing that there is not just Ofer, and there are also other parliamentarians, other members of the Knesset with us. As I told Ofer, your work is so important. Your very existence for who you are, people who see a reality that they cannot unsee. You are taking risks yourself. Trust me, I bring you with me in every every speech I give, I say, let's not invisibilize those Israelis who are struggling against or resisting the genocide, the apartheid, and the occupation. But people need to hear you more. So I know how challenging it is, but there are many. This is the case in my country, where there is a Jewish community which has started to be divided. And now, for example, after October 7, there are so many groups, especially not so many groups, there are two groups. And the Laboratory Against Racism and Tikkun, who have, and there are others who are quite vocal and really do an educational work that is phenomenal, but there are few. And they are rejected from their communities because most of the Jewish people in Italy really blindly support Israel because they are convinced that Israel represents. I would like Jewish people to feel safe wherever they are and not to have to think that they need to flee somewhere. But in fact, the reality is that the Jewish people in Israel feel unsafe right now and are looking at their other passports in order to know where to flee. So this is why I'm saying try to travel as much as you can and try to speak. So, convince other people to come with you to the West Bank. Please give protection to the Palestinians because this is the only thing that will start cementing to pave toward the peace we need when there will be real peace, meaning end of terror. Now, my prediction. On the 14th or 16th of October 2023. So imagine back then, no one at the international level would dare utter a word of criticism toward Israel because you would be a Hamas enabler, Hamas defender, a justifier of terrorism. I've been accused of so many things that I lost count. And I said, watch out, because under the fog of war, I expressed my solidarity, my empathy with the victims, survivors, with the families of the hostages. I've been in touch with the families of the hostages. I don't need to. I never say that because I don't need to make publicity. I know what I do, and I believe what I do, how I do that. I made my mistakes, but it really comes from a place of good intentions. And so I said on the 14th of October, mind you, international community, that under the fog of war, Israel is going to cause the most significant destruction and a situation, for ethnic cleansing that has ever been produced since the Nakba, since 1967. Why? Because as a scholar of Palestinian forced displacement, I've learned that Israel take advantage. Israel, nothing has changed in this Israeli establishment in their ambitions of never relinquishing control, never relinquishing, in fact, their territorial ambitions of what remained of the territory between the river of the sea, between the river and the sea. All the more with a coalition made of Netanyahu's Netanyahu was denied the right of the Palestinians to have a state since even entering politics. And Smotrich, who I really, again, the only place I can imagine these people to be is The Hague. The Hague, if not being facing justice in Israel itself. But again, these people have been advocating for ethnic cleansing since they have a microphone in front of them or a megaphone in front of them. So I listening what some Israeli ambassadors were saying, oh, but the Palestinians, we will give them shelters in the Sinai, schools and lights and everything. I said, this doesn't look good. My prediction was right. Israel has destroyed intentionally everything that could represent the chance for Palestinian return. And this has been done in 1947, 1949, because the displacement of Palestinians didn't start in May 2024, as many of you already know, started in 1947, in November 1947. For half of the Palestinians who were displaced became Palestinian refugees, were displaced before May 1948, following massacres, following instances of rape. My belated, my dear friend Alon Confino wrote a book about Tura, but there are massacres, at least 50 massacres that were reported with the destruction of villages, 56 villages.
This is what you mentioned before regarding Adam Raz.
And so on and so forth. And same thing in 1967. Israel occupied the West Bank, Gaza and Jerusalem, and destroyed so much that could not allow Palestinians to return. And so 350,000 Palestinians were displaced in 1967, never allowed to return. So this is one prediction that was right. The other prediction was in March 2024, when I said, wait a second, what Israel is doing is creating a doctrine of Italian camouflage, meaning Israel is using international law like evacuation orders, safe zones, collateral damage, human shields, Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which will come later, but a jargon that has camouflaged the reality. The fact that Israel has crushed each and every principle of international humanitarian law. Even in war, there are rules. You cannot target hospitals. And Israel has been saying all along the hospitals were used as Hamas facilities. Provide evidence. Provide evidence. All the doctors who have been there, I mean, the majority of doctors who have been there have said that there was no evidence of medical facilities being used, not in the instances that where Israel has attacked them. Now, the other thing is that as medical doctors in Gaza have been accused of curing the hostages. But now, if a doctor finds himself, actually it's a medical obligation, the obligation of medical personnel, if they receive anyone, including a combatant or a soldier or anyone, they need to cure him or her. So they've been punished because of this. Palestinian doctors and journalists since the very beginning have been targeted. But again, no principle of distinctions, no principle of proportionality, no principle of military necessity. And this is why I said, if the international community doesn't stop Israel now, this will become a new modus operandi of running conflict. 6 months passed and Israel was doing to Lebanon what it had done to Gaza. Massive bombing, residential areas. Netanyahu telling the Lebanese, oh, sorry, we are going to destroy your homes. Because, you have missiles under your sofas or missiles under your garage, in your garage. Excuse me, who are you to say that? And hundreds and hundreds of civilians during the first hours of the bombing have been affected by it. But also think of the pager. You know that damn thing, the pager, has blinded and killed and maimed over 1,500 people. Is it not a terrorist attack? Why can we not denounce that and not say that that was brutal and Israel shouldn't have been used the pager to hit the Lebanese people? So, the double standard. So, and now that strategy is being used in Iran and in Lebanon. People, I know that those who are part of this discussion are sort of converted, they might agree with me. I would like this to be heard by others who think that this is not happening. Please look at what Israel is doing to the Lebanese people. Do you think that this will not create further resistance? Do you realize that Hamas, which by the way, has had its first victims among Palestinians themselves? I've been critical of Hamas since I set foot in Gaza because of what Hamas had done to Palestinians, including to the secular culture of the Palestinians. But this is beside the point. Hamas and Hezbollah are byproducts of decade-old occupation. The occupation was already 25-year-old when Hamas was born and when Hezbollah was born. So this is the thing. The more you keep on seeing wars, the more you will create enemies around you. And the other prediction has been, yes, what is happening today. I've said what is happening in Palestine will not stay in Palestine, because this Israeli-US partnership will bring havoc to the region, because I knew that after Palestine, Lebanon, Yemen is not that dangerous. It's Iran, and after Iran, Turkey. This is the trajectory, because the idea of Greater Israel has nothing to do. This is something I realized recently. But the idea of Greater Israel is not even an Israel's only project. It's something that is very convenient to US, to the rapacious elites in the US, and those who have an interest in having Israel as an ally, including in Europe, rapacious elites in Europe as well, who have an interest in having Israel as an ally. The one, as the German chancellor said, doing the dirty job for all of us among the Arabs. So do not forget, like another Israeli historian told me, Ras Segal, the idea of the pure race was not born with Hitler, it didn't die with Hitler. Indeed, it has been predicated throughout colonialism and this means of the civilizing mission of the white people. And it had been, clearly, it didn't die with the defeat of Nazi fascism. And we are still fighting with that enemy of humanity, which is racism. The fact that we cannot see each other as members of a human family. We look at us based on the color of the skin, the religion, the ethnical belonging, the political credo. It doesn't work.
Thank you. We were not going to be able to get to all the questions, but I'll lobby a couple of them at you, and we'll see how much. No, it's quite fine. It's of course interesting. So
you must invite me again.
We'll be very much like to, absolutely. One question is, do you think there is finally a crucial change in international public opinion regarding the occupation in Palestine? And in this stage of capitalism that you talked about, techno-feudalism and so on, when billionaires have so much power, what do you think that movements can do to impact the situation? And third one, I'll ask at you. What is actually the solution that you currently see in order us to avoid more generations of hatred and violence and fear? Very simple questions, of course.
Sorry, Omri, do you mind? I understood the second question on the movement, the second question on how to prevent hatred. 1 million questions. What's the first one?
The first one, do you think there's now a crucial change in public opinion in the world regarding the occupation in Palestine?
Oh, yes. When I started my work as a special rapporteur, I can tell you, I mean, I would give presentations and there would be probably 50 people, average age 70. Those who had been, the supporters of the Palestinian struggle for self-determination 2 centuries ago, with all due respect. But it was very difficult. I mean, people, even my generation and a little bit of the younger generation, they really lacked the words and the cardinal points to orient themselves, let alone the grammar to articulate their thoughts. And this is why I've been writing books. Not only I've been writing reports, but I've been writing books. By the way, sorry, I don't intend to do that for publicity purposes. But there has been such an opposition to the English translation of the book that I wrote, where I have a chapter that talks about a dear friend, Alon, and it's a book about Palestine, what Palestine has taught us, or why, how did we get to have a genocide without being to see it and prevent it. And it's titled When the World Sleeps. And it has been translated. It was published last year, and it has been translated in many languages, 18 languages, and English is the last one to come out. There has been such an opposition to have in the US to have that book published, because they don't want dehumanization, they don't want humanity, they don't want hope. Whomever is supporting the pro-apartheid people don't have any feeling. Actually, most of them, I mean, the Zionists, they're not even Jews, they're Christian Zionists. They're everywhere, including in Europe. And I say people are not equipped to see them. But again, we need to be careful with ideology, because when they can lead us to dangerous places. And so, but I do see now, through my work of people like Ofer, the work that the human rights community in Israel has done. God bless B'Tselem. I mean, incredibly courageous people. And of course, the Palestinians themselves, Palestinian survivors. Jesus Christ, these people have such a capacity. I've learned the meaning of mood. I've learned the meaning of mood, like capacity to bring fruits, a gift that keeps giving despite all the harm that is done to you. So I often say, I have been, when people ask me, how do you remain so joyful with all the that comes to you? I say, first of all, I receive much more love and appreciation than hatred. Yes, the sanctions are hard to deal with, but this is just practicalities. There are so many people who send me gifts, who pay for dinners, wherever I go. So it's okay, I can live without some of my assets. But the thing is that it's just beautiful to do the right thing in life. And I will never forget myself to go through this period without doing what I think is right, to stay by the side of the most vulnerable. Because as I was reading Primo Levi, I was wondering how it's possible that in my own world, 30 years ago, all this happened. Is because people didn't see Jewish people as humans. They saw them as somewhat worthy of the deserving the fate that had befallen them. And this is something that this has been my greatest lesson. So I do see that through this work of talking to people relentlessly, me, Palestinian survivors, the human rights community, the scholarly community, which has become more and more common. Most of it, frankly, has been done. I remember from the beginning, I was in the US in October 2023, Jewish people themselves. I remember it was so beautiful to see this huge number of young Jewish Americans taking the streets, blocking the underground, the tube, and really taking the time to devote themselves to advocate against violence. And many of them had lost family members on October 7th. So I do think that this has ignited change. There is an awakening. Palestine has been apocalyptic in this sense. Apocalypse is not just destruction, it means revelation. So Palestine has revealed who we are as individuals, as professionals, our states, as holding powers or non-power holders. And so it does show what we had to do. Of course, it's so much easier to go back to sleep and pretend not to see what's going on because it's really painful. But we cannot afford this for our children because we are mothers. Eventually, we are mothers, fathers against violence. And those of us who have children, doesn't matter. But we need to educate the new generation to love instead of hatred, to bridge diversity. And actually, it's so beautiful to have a diverse community. And this is something that I try to convey through my work. What the movement needs to do more, cut the economic ties that is allowing the system to profit from the misery of the Palestinians, the misery of many Israelis, and the misery of all of us soon to be. Because again, now this increasing mindset toward now there is the weaponization of fear. I mean, I come from a country whose constitution was written really with the blood of young people who gave their life against Nazi fascism. And it's so Italians have very anti-war mentality. They might not care much about international politics, but you will not easily convince an Italian to go to war. And this is where the government did the wrong bet in aligning itself with Israel. And we have the most pro-Israel government of Italian Republican history, and at the same time, the most pro-Palestine youth that we have ever had. And I correct myself. It's not pro-Palestine, it's anti-apartheid. There is a movement that it's anti-apartheid, and I keep on saying we need to unite the struggles. We need to stand united. Anyone who is against occupation, against genocide, against apartheid must be welcome. And we need to work hand in hand. Like the keffiyeh. You know the pattern of the keffiyeh? We are the knot, and we need to hold each other's hands and move together. This is why I really despise the divisiveness that exists in some movements, and we need to emancipate ourselves from this pettiness. We need to boycott. We need to push for divestment. We need to make sure that Israel is suspended by the international community, from the United Nations until it ends its occupation, genocide, and apartheid, and then it offers reparations. This is the only thing that can bring us forward. No one is going to pick it out.
The simplest ones.
Sorry, say it again.
The simplest ones.
Yeah, everyone can live between the river and the sea. Of course, anyone who calls that land home. But of course, there is the wounds of the past that have to be recognized, because Israel cannot keep on hiding its original sin. It's okay to make mistakes, and this is also part of the growing process. It's better to admit the mistakes of the past because the conditions were such that produced. I keep on saying, I understand why many Jewish people think that Israel is the only safe place they have, because they've been indoctrinated to think that. But we are no longer in 1945, and we shouldn't go there. And the only way to go there is to stop Israel, because Israel is the most significant threat to the safety of Jewish people worldwide, who now are being hit because they are considered emissaries or ambassadors or associated with what Israel does. And I defend everyone, including those who defend Israel. Because I say the problem, you cannot resolve the matter by attacking people. We need to focus on states and institutions, corporations, etc. The last but not least, what is needed is legal action. So I don't know where you are in Israel with that, but why no one has tried to bring to court Smotrich and Ben-Gvir? I mean, why they're still at free? They incite genocide, ethnic cleansing. They are responsible of the torture policy that Ben-Gvir is responsible for is enough, and they've fully documented it. So it's an act of indictment. Every day they speak, it's an act of indictment. So they should be brought to justice. And please, Israelis who still have at heart the future of your country, the future of your people, really take a robust stand today against this racist mentality that has caused the Maya that is going on today. Join the Palestinians in the struggle, continue to build bridges, because this is what will make the scaffolding that will eventually salvage everything that remains of the institutions now existing between the river and the sea. But they need to be decolonized.
Thank you. I'll just to finish, there you two more questions, although I know there are many more. One is why are European countries still supporting Israel to such an extent, despite the large demonstrations and public discontent with it? And maybe the most important questions, under a fascist government and all the crimes that are going on, where do you think we can find hope?
Okay.
You're muted.
Sorry, I was my audio. I think that there is a combination. I wouldn't say countries, because the people in most European countries are really shocked, depressed, and they feel powerless in the face of what has happened over the past 2 years. This is why you have people like me keeping on hammering, saying, yes, we can do that together, we can change this. And pressure works. If my own government, which is quite, as I said, the most pro-Israel ever, has declared its intention to suspend the defense partnership they have with the Israeli government, because pressure works. And so there are different things that, so people are not happy with what their governments are doing. In Germany, the state has been beating the hell out of people for 2 years because of protesting against genocide. 2024, if I'm not wrong, was the year where the highest number of Jewish people were arrested in Germany for protesting against the genocide, because there are many Israelis living in Germany, and they are against this because they know. I mean, they have left Israel because they couldn't stand the racism that was growing in the Israeli society. I mean, I've interacted with many of them. There are also German Jews or other Jewish people, and they've been part of this movement. They are part of those who have been repressed and suppressed. Maybe I've been invited by Jewish people in Canada, in the United States, and in Germany itself to give talks. And there were more police than participants. And in France, in Italy, in the UK, there has been such a repression against the civil society, crushing our own fundamental freedoms, like freedom of expression. In the UK, in order to protect Israel, has brought its own citizens, elderly people, priests, nuns, to interrogation rooms with the accusation of terrorism, or the suspicion of terrorism, because of standing against the genocide. There are journalists who have been accused of terrorism. And so parliamentarians who have been refused, European parliamentarians who have been refused entry in other European countries. Look, it's phenomenal. The craziness that European powers, European leaders, with few exceptions, in Belgium, to an extent, in Ireland, in Slovenia, and in Spain, apart from these countries, most of them have been really pro-Israel. Why? Because the decision power is not in the hands of citizens, it is in the hands of financial powers and lobbying groups. As simple as that. So protecting partnerships with Israel is more important than listening to the citizens' call for action. And by standing by Israel, by continuing to trade, to transfer weapons, these member states have violated international law. Now, when you violate international law, even condoning crimes, probably joining crimes, you risk to be liable. And this is why now it's so important to have lawyers, former judges, academics, civil society, uniting forces to bring these people before a court, before the justice system. They need to be held accountable. So this is why I'm saying that fighting oppression through legal means and peacefully takes longer, but it means a stronger future. And I annoy many people by insisting on the fact that of course there is a right to resist, but really this it what is going to lead to the liberation of the Palestinians? No. What is going to lead to the liberation of the Palestinians and Israelis from apartheid is respect for the law, equality, non-discrimination, accountability, reparation. So all this is to be agreed. So the reason why governments do not stick by it is because ideologically either they are profoundly racist, and there is a significant component of this ideology, including in those who are at the government right now in our own country, in other places in Europe. Private interest and ideology, and also ignorance. They don't know. They really believe, because Israel, after all, is like us, no? And is a civilized country, quote unquote. And so it's surrounded by Arabs. So why would you trust them? I mean, Europeans are racist. Not all Europeans. But many Europeans are still racist as they were 1 century ago. Anti-Semitism is about that, just anti-Judaism. Is intolerance for anyone Semite. This is why.
Thank you. Do you still want to say a word about where you think we can find hope?
You're asking Francesca, you're asking me, or asking both of us?
I guess both. Yeah.
Good. So
if you have an answer, please. I think that's the most important question.
First?
No, you go first.
Okay.
I have the feeling that I will be more hopeful.
Well, you know, I always say that I'm quoting Antonio Gramsci, who said that it's better to be pessimist of the intellect, but optimist of the will. So that's a motto I've been trying to cling to. I do not say that I'm always successful. Sometimes it's tougher, but I'm trying to. And beyond being, poetic, as it were, I truly believe that we have a good reason to be pessimists as far as the intellect is concerned. That is to say that tough days, hard days, painful days are ahead of us, in addition to what we've been witnessing in the last few years anyway. But at the same time, we can see that the struggle against evil is going stronger as well, within Israel as well as globally. And that's a very good reason to be hopeful. And it's not a coincidence, I believe, that although I haven't asked him, that Gramsci used the concept of will, because in other words, it says that we have to trust our ability to change the world. And like the students in 68 in France that said, be realistic, demand the impossible. And I think that that's something that at least makes me hopeful. I must say a personal thing, that sometimes it's very easy for me to be broken. Given that, just to give you one very simple example, I cannot, I cannot go out of my home by myself. I cannot walk down the street because it's risky. Every day, the few times I tried, people try to attack me physically. So it's not very easy. It's not very nice, but still, so sometimes, of course, it is tough and difficult to pursue with our struggle, but we don't give up. And I'm quite hopeful in the long run. I'm pretty sure that we will prevail. And it's not like an Hollywoodian, movie that must be ended in optimism and in a nice vision of the coast, in the sunset or something like that. That's not what I'm trying to say. It's not a romantic vision. What I'm trying to say is that the struggle goes on.
Yeah.
And it's not only that it goes on. It proves to be more and more powerful. We see it every weekend in the last few weeks in Israel. We see that vis-a-vis the brutality of the police, the violence inflicted on us by the police and some fascist militias, People have been arrested. And they still take, and people were under missiles from Iran or Lebanon. And they still took to the streets to protest.
Yeah.
What's more hopeful than that? And let alone outside of Israel. So I believe that there's a good reason. But, and I finish with this, we are doomed if we do not get enough support from the international community. We cannot do it by ourselves. We are obliged to do so. We are obliged to struggle. We will continue, but we need the international community on our side. And, and we can see a slight change in that matter as well. And we will prevail. We shall overcome.
Absolutely.
Francesca, you're muted.
You're muted.
Yes. Again, I'm such a dinosaur. Okay. I have to. I mean, I wish I could be more hopeful than that. But I really think that we are doing the right thing. And first of all, don't think even for a second that you are alone. And it's so splendid what you are doing, because there is a say in Italian, which I know that there are a few Italians saying that non può venire mai più buio di mezzanotte. It cannot be darker than midnight. I don't know if it works in other languages. And this is we are in the darker hour of midnight. It seems that everything is lost. But I, in a way, I will tell it in a more poetic way than Ofer, because I'm Southern Italian. But there is people like us, if we are together right now in this moment, it's because we believe that we do not have an alternative. We cannot go back to sleep. We cannot ignore. We cannot just carry on with our life without thinking of what is happening to our brothers and sisters, Muslims, secular Jews. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what's happening to others. And why do we do so? I think that people like us, I imagine people like us walking in the storm, even when the fury of the rain is so much that blinds you. We keep on walking ahead and keeping tight to our chest what we are carrying. That is the most precious thing. If we drop it, we will not find it again. And this is freedom. We are using our freedom, no matter how shrinking it is. Of course, I know what you. I mean, I don't feel the same level of threat that you feel in Israel, because I live in a country where I feel protected. I often report to the police. I have police around me, but I am in a country where people. I'm in Tunisia, but in Italy, the only place where I've been aggressed by someone, it's in Italy. And it was someone saying, you want to send people like me back to Auschwitz. He was a Jewish person from Rome. And it was another Jewish person with me who started arguing, and then they were fighting, and end of the story. But when I was attacked, my posture was, please take a seat. He was insulting me and really throwing slurs of all sorts of, I won't repeat what he was saying because I'm a decent person, but doesn't matter. I could handle his age. I wanted him to be reassured, sit down, pause, and tell me why I am such a horrible person who risks to send people like him back to Auschwitz. And this is why, because right now I'm epitomized the international community. This is the role of the international community. Those of us who sit outside Israel have a greater responsibility to help you. I mean, I keep on saying, we should have people going to the West Bank. They cannot enter Gaza, but they should try to enter the West Bank, try to enter Israel and join forces. There is a movement that needs to enrich itself. But meanwhile, there is something very, very important. I will continue I'm reinforced by what you are telling me, because I often speak, like, as I said before, I say, let's not invisibilize those Israelis who are fighting against the system. And yes, I understand, like Joseph was saying, they are arrested and for a social post. But this is the thing. This is why I've always been saying, and people like Palestinian human rights organization and organizations and Israeli human rights organizations have said it for decades. There will be a boomerang effect of the brutal practices that Israel uses against the Palestinians. Now they start being used against everyone. In this sense, this is oppression. It's innate in the nature of power. But at the same time, something that is very, very important is that you call upon the Jewish people, the Jewish communities in Europe. I would tell you, look, there is Noemi Di Segni, who is the head of the Jewish, Italian Jewish communities, who should listen to you, who should visit you. Because she's a strong defender of Israel, invite her to come. Invite all the people from France, challenge them. Tell them to come and see the conditions in which you live. Because they are the ones who are today using the freedoms that our liberal constitutions ensure in order to silence people like you. I mean, there is a weaponization of anti-Semitism, of the fight against anti-Semitism, which is phenomenal. You cannot say Israel anymore. They point at you as anti-Semite. I say, let them pass these laws. Doesn't matter. It will make our life harder. But we will go to a constitutional court, and the constitutional court will declare the Yadam law, or the Gasparri law, or in Australia, or in Germany. These laws will be declared unlawful, unconstitutional, and this is. I will keep walking by keeping my freedom close to my heart. They tell, "Oh, you are such an activist." No, I'm not an activist. I'm a responsible citizen, as you are. So please, I know it's dark, but we are these sparkles of light, and we are moving together to unite and enlighten the darkness. We just need not to lose steam, because we cannot lose ourselves.
Great. Thank you so much, Francesca, and thank you, Ofer. Again, it's
Thank you all.
enlightening.
Thank you, Francesca. It was a pleasure.
Yes. To the audience, I'll say that tomorrow we're having the Peace Partnership Organization are having tomorrow at 7:30 in Abima Square in Tel Aviv a demonstration against the settler terrorism in the West Bank. And you're all welcome to come and participate on this very, very important issue. Also tomorrow, as the Peace Partnership Organizations are going to publish a call to the international community to act against settler terrorism in the West Bank. I'll make sure we'll send a copy to you as well there, Francesca. But it's important for us as Israeli peace organizations and anti-occupation organizations to call on the world to act against the daily acts of violence committed by the settlers in the West Bank. So again, thank you so much for the both of you. It's been quite a pleasure. To the audience, we'll meet again in next events that we have. Each time we're hosting also activists from different organizations in the past partnership. And most of all, we'll see you on the streets in the demonstrations and the struggles up ahead.
Thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
I can promise
Thank you very much.
that I will also be your de facto ambassador. I didn't know this organization. Now I do, and I would also love to stay in touch with the Mothers Against Violence, because
Great.
or the Parents Against Violence, but because I'm a great supporter of feminine energy getting
Yes.
hold of power, let's stick to Mothers Against Violence.
Exactly.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
again
much.
for Mothers Against Violence for
Thank you.
building our platform and helping us and everything. Right.
Stay
So
strong.
grazie.
Bye. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Offer.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye,
Thank you,
Omri.
Francesca. Bye.